Space, a final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Hello there again. So Trekkie Dave here, and I'm just wanting to do my second video that I talked about in the introduction. And that video would be my analysis and discussion of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Star Trek the Motion Picture was a film that came out in 1979. It was directed by Robert Wise, and it was produced by Star Trek's creator Gene Roddenberry. It's the actual only Star Trek film that Roddenberry had creative control of. And I think that's key. Like, that's very important to me about what this film is trying to say, the fact that Roddenberry had control of it from beginning to end. So there's some concepts and ideas here that I think are kind of not lofty exactly, but they're not ideas and concepts that I can just spontaneously talk about because they're complicated. That's the way I would describe it. They're complicated, and they literally affect the entire film, from its visual storytelling to its thematic meaning and deeper meanings. So I've written stuff down, so this would be the only video I do going forward where I'm going to be reading a little bit, because if I just spontaneously try to discuss this, I know I'm going to go down rabbit holes. And the most important thing to me with this video today is that the information I'm delivering to you is clear and concise. This would almost be a better essay, like a written essay, than it is a video. But it is what it is, and I think I can get the ideas across. So first off, I'll give you my my thesis. Here's my thesis. It's kind of out there, because I know that this is a very I know that a lot of people don't like this movie, and they see it as a very superficial movie. To a lot of people, not only is this not a good movie, but it's not a good Star Trek movie. And I strongly disagree with that analysis across the board. Not only is this movie freaking incredible, this movie is the greatest Star Trek movie ever made, period, end stop. And I'll tell you my reasoning for this. Okay, when I think of great science fiction films from the late 1970s, two films immediately come to my mind. First would be Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey. I think that I could make a video that this is one of the greatest films ever made, and the reasons for that. The other film would be Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. And what I find the most interesting about Star Trek the Motion Picture, it's very possible that Gene Roddenberry was influenced by 2001. I think visually and with its deeper meanings, there's no question that he was trying to recreate 2001: A Space Odyssey in some ways. And even the advertisement for the film at the time seemed like they were aware of that, because I saw captions for this film that if I remember correctly, it was worded a 23rd century Odyssey today. So Odyssey today. So it's clearly the studio was aware of what they had. Gene Roddenberry was not trying to capture that Star Wars shoot 'em up kind of vibe and tone. That would come later with The Wrath of Khan, which I think Nicholas Meyer, I love The Wrath of Khan, and I think Nicholas Meyer nailed it. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is also one of the greatest films ever made, and Nicholas Meyer captured that feel and tone of Star Wars like I don't think any other movie did at that time. But Gene Roddenberry wasn't even going there. There's barely any action in this movie. In fact, I know that a lot of fans that hate this film, Star Trek the Motion Picture, have called it Star Trek the Motionless Picture, which is really hysterical. And I understand it, because You could say the same thing about 2001: A Space Odyssey. When you watch that film, it's boring as heck. But the ideas behind it, the ideas that ground the narrative, are beyond immense and scope, and it's about human existence and our place within this ginormous universe. And Star Trek the Motion Picture is about the same stuff, but one key difference, and this is where, for me, Star Trek the Motion Picture goes from being a good film to a great film. Not just a great film, but its message, to me, is a stronger and better message, and it totally fits Roddenberry's humanist view of the humanity and the universe. So in 2001: A Space Odyssey, we're given a scenario where humans, from the very dawn of time, have been guided by an alien intelligence. Basically, they've guided us from the Stone Age to our path into outer space, into our solar system. They're guiding us. It's clear that they're manipulating us. That opening scene of the cavemen, and they find a tool because of the monolith, and that tool the ape throws it into the air. The tool spins. All it is a bone, but he uses it as a weapon. It comes down and it becomes a satellite in outer space, thousands of years later, probably 5,000 years later. So it's clear what Kubrick is saying there. He's saying that alien intelligence is guiding us. They are helping us get into the universe. Okay, Gene Roddenberry had a very, very different view on this, a very humanist view. And his view was that no one is guiding us. We are in control of our destiny. We decide what we're doing, and we're not being manipulated by anyone, good or bad. We're in control of our destiny, and we're in control of humanity. Okay, so that's key. So what I put here is, and with the whole thing about Blade Runner, that is also a part of my thesis here, because Blade Runner is about man's relationship to our machines, okay? Star Trek the Motion Picture also touches upon that theme throughout the film, specifically with the character of V'ger, and when Ilea is, consumed by V'ger, and how the crew interacts from Decker to Spock to McCoy to Kirk, our relationship with Ilea. So it's not a coincidence that it is true that V'ger itself is an alien, an incomprehensible alien that we encounter, an unknown, but it's not a coincidence that it was a Voyager 6 space probe that NASA launched. That's key to understanding this film, because we built Voyager 6. Humans built Voyager 6. And then Voyager 6 comes back hundreds of years later to destroy us. That's important because it's about our relationship and how we deal with technology. That's a thematic component, a key thematic component of this film, like Blade Runner. So to me, on my list of the greatest films of all time, all three of those films share similar themes and similar ideas, but I don't think any of them have a better narrative or a more concise story that brings it all together with all of those, confusing themes than Star Trek the Motion Picture. So for me, I would put Star Trek the Motion Picture as number one. I would put 2001 as number two, and I would put Ridley Scott's masterpiece, Blade Runner, as number three. And I'll explain why, okay? So anyways, I just put, it's a very underrated and underappreciated cinematic and musical masterpiece. So, there are three key elements, and I don't want this video to be 5 hours, so I'm just going to try to condense my thinking down to three key ideas. Because what I see a lot from the reviews that I see, and I completely disagree with this analysis, other reviews that I see say that Star Trek the Motion Picture is a good movie, a good science fiction movie with lofty themes and ideas, but it's a terrible Star Trek movie. And it should have just been done by a random crew in a random future. It didn't have to be a Star Trek movie. I completely disagree with that. And I'll tell you the main reason why I completely disagree with that. One of the key components of the original series, structurally, was the Great Triangle, or the Great, what was the word, Julie, I used?
Trinity.
Trinity. The Great Triangle, or the Great Trinity. And just to explain this very simply, what it basically is a triangle. It's a structural component of the original show, and it is on full display in this movie. It is the driving narrative force that drives this movie. And what it essentially is you have a triangle with Kirk, McCoy, and Spock, and each represents a different part of humanity. Kirk is the bravado. He's the aggression. He's the guy that gets shit done when no one else can do it. I mean, that's a simple way of wording it. And then you have Spock and his logic. Spock sees everything from the standpoint of logic. And then you have McCoy, who is the emotion. McCoy is the empathy. McCoy is my favorite character in Star Trek, and he always has been. I love the guy. I love DeForest Kelley. I love his version. I actually like Kyle Urban's version too. So one of the things I liked about the new films, or whatever, the Calvin universe or whatever it's called. But I love McCoy. He's the most human of human characters. And a big structural component of the narrative of this film is bringing the crew back together. So we have an intruder, an unknown alien entity that's going to destroy Earth, right? So humanity assembles a crew in the Starship Enterprise, and they have to intercept this intruder before it's too late. They need to intercept it. They need to uncover what the mystery is. They need to use reasoning and common sense or whatever. They need to reason their way out of this, because V'ger, the alien entity, is so powerful that we have no chance. This film begins with an opening scene. And again, it's not a coincidence that the opening scene involves Klingons who are completely wiped out, which is kind of interesting because they're shot by V'ger, but they don't explode. They're literally absorbed by V'ger, like this electronic absorption, which I had never seen anything like that on screen. I don't think since, except maybe The Matrix or something. It was a very kind of interesting idea. But they're not destroyed, they're simply absorbed what they are, which is even more insidious somehow. But anyways, at the end of the day, we take the big bad guys from the original series, and in the opening scene, it's made clear that they cannot stand up to V'ger. They're wiped out easy. V'ger's not even trying. So it's clear to us as the audience that Starfleet's going to have the same problem. This is the latest Klingon technology. Well, the Enterprise is the latest Federation technology. And when we go up against V'ger, we are not going, if we don't somehow find a way to understand what's going on and what V'ger wants, this is over before it begins. This is basically the scene, the amazing scene of the Enterprise leaving, this spark of humanity that leaves dry dock to intercept the intruder. This is on an epic scale, because to me, it's clear that this is a suicide mission, essentially, that our chances here are really slim from what we've seen leading up to that scene. The Enterprise is going to intercept V'ger. V'ger is going to launch its weapons, which they don't even understand. There's some kind of plasma weapon. They don't even know what the targeting system is. And we're going to get wiped out. a structural component of this film is getting the original crew back together to confront this alien entity. So it begins by Kirk getting McCoy. He can't get Spock. Spock is off on Vulcan doing the Kolinar, so he can't get him. He wants the Vulcan in the position, it's clear, but he's unable to. So he gets McCoy. So immediately, okay, McCoy, because he's empathetic, because he sees things, and he's always seen things, like back in the original series, it takes him not too long to figure out what's going on here. And he confronts Kirk, because McCoy believes that Kirk, and which McCoy is right, that Kirk is doing this for selfish reasons. And what is his selfish reason? His selfish reason is he wants the Enterprise back. Why does he want the Enterprise back? Well, he wants the Enterprise back because Kirk is in love with the Enterprise. And I know that sounds just so ridiculous, but Kirk loves the Enterprise. The scene of Kirk and Scotty in the pod, when Kirk first sees the Enterprise, and you can see the reflection of the Enterprise, and you can see Kirk's face. I mean, that is a man in love. He loves this machine, without question. So that's important, because there's no like romance exactly in this film. I think you could make an argument that there sort of is between Ilia and Deckard, but for Kirk, there's no romance. Kirk's romance in this film is literally the Enterprise. And Kirk is working. He's a man that wants his woman back. Sounds so silly, but he's a man that wants his woman back, and he's going to do anything he can to convince her to come back. That's a big narrative point in this film. So McCoy realizes what's going on, and what does he immediately begin to do? He immediately begins to push Kirk. He's pushing him to better him. Immediately, when they have that confrontation with Decker in Kirk's ready room, there's a really pivotal scene that I think doesn't get noticed that much or played up on that much, but I think it's huge, where it's almost like Kirk doesn't even realize what he's doing. He says to McCoy something like, so you're saying, because McCoy says to him, you push Starfleet to get the ship back, and then Kirk says, and I'm not going to give it back, is that what you're saying? And then McCoy says, Jim, it's an obsession that can, steer you to much more immediately. Your reaction to Decker is part of it. And then Kirk says, okay, well, what's next? What is the point of this, Doctor? What are you going to do? And McCoy looks at him and he says, that's up to you. And he walks out of the ready room, and the black door closes, and you can see Kirk's reflection, or see Kirk through it. Okay, this is a really important point in this movie. Something else is that the Enterprise isn't working when they first leave dry dock. They can't establish warp speed, and until Spock arrives. So the last piece of the triangle arrives, and immediately Spock helps Scotty to fix the warp drive. They successfully hit warp 7, and they're able to intercept the intruder while it's still more than a day from Earth. Okay, I remember reading a review once of the film where I thought it was kind of funny, because the reviewer was saying that, which is one of the only times I've ever seen a reviewer even acknowledge this Trinity. He noticed it in the movie, but he didn't see a resolution to it. He basically said in his review that, it's never resolved. Kirk just stops being a dick, and everything goes well with the mission. But my argument with that, it's not that Kirk stops being a dick. Spock arrives, fixes the warp drive. The triangle is now in place. McCoy doing his part, Spock doing his part with logic and science, and Kirk is now doing his part. So the three of them, those two assisting him, Kirk's able to slide back into the position he was in the original series by taking their viewpoints and taking their styles, feeding off of it, and he becomes the best Kirk. So that when they confront the intruder, Kirk confronts it the way he would have confronted it in the original series if they had come across something like this. And to me, that is key. This film works narratively and structurally because of that triangle. If the triangle isn't there, and it's not this established triangle that we had over the original series, then it's not clear what's going on. Then yeah, Kirk just stops being a dick and all of that. But because we know of the triangle and how it works, it's a key component of what makes this movie work. Okay, that to me is huge, the triangle. Second is introductions. This is huge for me because one of the biggest complaints I see about this film over and over again is people that argue that this film is self-indulgent for self-indulgent reasons. And one scene that always comes up over and over and over again is the Enterprise flyby of Scotty and Kirk seeing the Enterprise for the first time. Okay. This is not fan service, and this is not self-indulgent. The reason for that scene, to me, is obvious. This film has 4 main characters, and incredibly, one of them is the Starship Enterprise. This is the only Star Trek film. This is what sets this film apart. The triangle does as well. It sets it apart because the triangle is something only the original series did. All the copies that came after TNG, all of them, they never captured. And even if we're not even mentally aware of the triangle, it affects the way we view the characters. Okay, this film is the only Star Trek film where the Starship Enterprise itself is an actual character in the movie. So this film begins with 4 introductions. We're introduced to V'ger, to this alien entity. We're then introduced to Spock on Vulcan, going through the Kolinar. We're then introduced to Kirk arriving at Starfleet headquarters as he's about to take command of the Enterprise and go and intercept the intruder. And we're introduced to the Enterprise. The Enterprise is not just a machine in this film. Like the replicants in Blade Runner, the Enterprise is an actual character. And this is us meeting the character for the first time in this film. This kind of new character, because it's a new Enterprise. And Kirk's reaction to meeting this new character is important. It's key. Okay. The other and last one that I just want to cover. And that's man's relationship to our machines. And I'll get back to that idea a little bit later. So I hope that I've been able to communicate these themes. But that's what I see. All of those themes is the narrative underpinning of this film. V'ger is all logic. And part of this movie, Spock's character arc, because at the beginning of the film, his goal is to essentially surrender his humanity, to become all logical. He is then looking to V'ger as what he could become, but what becomes clear through the course of the film is that that's not the path to enlightenment. It's actually humanity. It's actually our human nature, emotions, that are the path that we need to take to get to this enlightenment. V'ger is sterile, and V'ger needs our help to go beyond logic at the end of the film. The film is about V'ger going beyond logic and taking a human, which is our emotions and so forth, to better itself, essentially to evolve. It's said in the film that V'ger needs to evolve to go to that next level. Okay, so that's an interesting concept. Okay, so I would just like to end with this, okay? In my opinion, this film is a labor of love by Hollywood legends at the time, and it's the greatest singular cinematic achievement of Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry. He successfully transitioned his 1960s television show to the big screen and fully realizing the humanism themes and idealism he incorporated as a core value into his Trek. Okay, so specifically, Star Trek, the motion picture, emphasizes human dignity and sees humans solving problems with rational thought. Specifically, Star Trek, the motion picture, explores man's relationship to our machines and examines our exploration of the universe itself as an exploration of our very nature as human beings. Star Trek, the motion picture, concerns itself with our exploration of the unknown, with the vastness of the universe and our place within that universe. Okay? V'ger refers to the Enterprise itself as a life form, and humans, carbon units, as basically a disease, kind of similar to how the Matrix did the same thing when it referred to humanity as like a cancer or whatever. The theme of man's relationship to machines concludes spectacularly with the physical connection at the end of the film between Decker, Ilia, and V'ger. In this film, V'ger believes machines are true life forms and humans are a biological infestation. Through V'ger, the film refers to the Enterprise as a life form, essentially a character in the narrative. This specifically is important in regards to this theme. There's no romance for Kirk in this film, no traditional romance. His romance is with his old ship. He gave her back to me, Scotty. Look at Kirk's face in the pod when Scotty turns it to fully show the ship for the first time. That look is Kirk's conquest, Kirk's passion and love for a machine. Deckard says to Kirk at the end of the film, "You wanted the Enterprise, I want this." Deckard joins with a machine. At the end of the film, so does Kirk. So basically, I just wanted to conclude on that. I know that I'm not trying to change any, minds here or whatever about a film that's 40 plus years old. I know a lot of people, it's ingrained, they don't like the film, and I understand that. Like, I get it. I get it. It is a slow movie, no question. But hopefully next time you watch it, you think about some of these things I brought up, and maybe it might change your perception a little bit. That's my goal with this anyways. So I just wanted to do a quick little show and tell because this film means so much to me, and I just have some items from that time that I think are kind of cool. And I just thought it would be kind of neat to show you. I don't know. I thought I would make this like a thing I do with videos. It's just kind of a fun little show and tell. So first off, here's the novelization. It was actually written by Gene Roddenberry, which I think is pretty unique. It's the only Star Trek book Gene Roddenberry ever wrote. And what's really cool about it, when you read the book, you can tell that Gene Roddenberry wrote it. Like, it's his utopian humanist future. The human adventure is just beginning, is on full display in this book. And my mom loved this book. I've read this book a couple of times. I know my mom read it like 10 times. It's incredible. So here was the Marvel adaptation of Star Trek comic-wise when it came out. This was a photo novel that came out. This thing is beautiful. It's incredible. Like in the years before we had, VHS and all of that, it was so incredible to be able to basically read the book in visual terms. Very cool. And then Jerry Goldsmith, which I didn't have time to mention. There's too much stuff. But Jerry Goldsmith has one of the greatest scores ever. It's beautiful. Okay. One other thing I wanted to mention, because I didn't mention that. Robert Wise went back to the film, and in 2001, he released the director's edition. I love the theatrical cut of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but the director's edition is incredible. I consider it to be the definitive version of this film. He fixed a few pacing issues, and it's overall a better film. Like, I still like the opening credits to the theatrical cut better, but that's a really minor little nitpick. This is amazing. And this is the theatrical cut in HD. If you've ever seen this in HD, my God, it's incredible. This film stands up visually. this is one of the most beautiful films ever made, like 2001 and Blade Runner. It cannot be touched. Visuals. Films made today don't even come close to looking like this from a complete design standpoint and just from a visual presentation. Star Trek: The Motion Picture is the greatest film ever made. Okay, and this one I wanted to bring up just because I thought it was kind of interesting. When I was a kid, I collected Starlog magazines, and this was the one when the film came out. It's actually not the most famous because this was number 30. Number 33 had Harlan Ellison's review of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Harlan Ellison was a writer who had worked on Star Trek before, and he did a review of the film that was quite scathing. I know my mom was very pissed off with Harlan Ellison's review back then. She felt that there had been a personal vendetta that Ellison had against Roddenberry, and that this review was an opportunity for Ellison to kind of dig it in on Roddenberry. And I don't know what I feel about that, because I didn't entirely agree with her, and I argued with her a little bit about that, because when you actually read Ellison's review, I think he makes a lot of legitimate points for criticisms. But I did agree with her that it is kind of an odd review in that Harlan Ellison, his basic argument in the review is that the film's not as fun as Star Wars. And my argument with that is that it's not trying to be Star Wars. It's trying to be 2001: A Space Odyssey with grand ideas and meaning. And I believe Roddenberry nailed that. So it's just kind of odd that his position would be that the film wasn't fun enough. It just kind of goes against everything that I know about Ellison. I've read some of his literature and stuff like that, and he seems like a guy that kind of thinks outside the box and stuff. And it's kind of surprising that that would be his take. So maybe my mom's right, and he did see an opportunity to go after Roddenberry and kind of derail, like, do a trolling thing like 40 years before the internet, where he could kind of derail the film a little bit, get that perception out there that the film was a bomb before it kind of hit the theaters, and kind of, screw Roddenberry around a bit, because there's no question they had a personal falling out. It's famous. Ellison was livid with Roddenberry for taking Ellison's City on the Edge of Forever script from season 1 and rewriting it. Nobody rewrites Harlan Ellison, and I know that he carried that grudge for that 10 years leading up to the motion picture. And so, maybe my mom's right, and there was an opportunity there to kind of like, I'm going to take this guy down. But you know what? Again, I don't know. That's completely theoretical. I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting. So that was number 33, Starlog. And the last thing I wanted to show, because it's huge, is this up here. This Cinefex, I got that at, we went to the film in Vancouver at the Capital 6 movie theater, and right next door is a comic store called Golden Age Collectibles. And when my mom and I went in there before the movie, they were selling it. It had just come out. So that's the number 1 issue from 1979. It has the Enterprise coming out of warp, and it's something that I don't know, one of my most prized possessions. I mean, it's just a magazine, but I think it's kind of cool. And that's it. So the next video I want to do is a video on the original series. I've never done a top 10 list. I've never done a top 10 list or anything like that before. So when I was thinking of ideas that I could do for the channel, I've always had the my own personal, the original series top 10 list in my mind, but I actually wrote it out, and I discovered something kind of odd and interesting. So I want to do a video about that, and I want to go over that with you guys and just see what you think. Like, I think the thing that I discovered doesn't mean everything, but I think it definitely means something, and I'm not sure what it means. But more of that later when I do that video. But release that video probably in like a week or whatever, kind of like with this. Okay, thank you, God bless, and I hope you got something out of this, and hopefully it might help change the perception of a much maligned film that, in my opinion, is one of the 3 greatest science fiction films ever made. That's it. Thank you. God bless.